good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time you're watching this. Guys, burn the midnight oil here. You know, didn't really have much of a chance to go over the USFL draft today. A couple work things came up, some XFL stuff came up, but here we are doing a little video on it. I'm currently working on my Michigan Panthers and Memphis Showboats draft recap, so we'll be seeing that coming on USFL News Hub. Now, a couple months ago, I wrote an article saying a couple of the quarterbacks I thought that the USFL should go after. David Piddell was on there, Stetson Bennett, Easton Stick, a couple guys, and even John Wolford, a AAF vet. Well, the USFL announced last week that they were going to be doing their draft today on Tuesday. Well, technically, it's Wednesday while I'm recording this late at night, but they were going to do a draft, but specifically only for college players. Now, on that list, Stetson Bennett and Austin Boone, the 29-year-old out of North Texas, who is returning to school, would be the only ones eligible on that list. So I was big into Stetson Bennett. I thought it would have been pretty awesome to see his draft rights get retained. But a lot of this is for guys who are probably going to be going to minicamp and have the opportunity. And to me, this is a good signal that the league is here for at least another couple of years, and that we could see them continue to build this brand, build the USFL. So I think it's a semi-positive, though slightly non-traditional way of kind of incorporating these fans and giving them hope that they'll be continuing and that Fox has a plan and Daryl Johnston has a plan. And I think it's a positive thing in the long run of a lot of this. Now, because I love quarterbacks, because my Twitter handle is NFL QB Talk, I should honestly change it to QB Talk, but I want to go over the 5 quarterbacks taken. Now, we saw 5 quarterbacks taken over about 3 rounds. There was 10 rounds of the draft, 8 picks per draft. The Generals had their first round, a couple of their picks mixed around a bit because of I don't want to use the word tampering, but because they oversigned the roster for training camp. So a lot of these guys might not play this year or have to make the decision, do I want to go to the USFL or risk doing the NFL training camp and whatnot? Now, the NFL draft is always in late April, so we may see these guys kind of come in a little bit later with everything going on. So they could do all their workouts, their pro days, or they can opt to sign with the team. There's some conflicting reports. Some signings were announced and then deleted off Twitter. People have been added to the rosters via Fox Sports, but in the end, that's a lot of politics to an extent. A lot of things are probably getting worked out. So right now, we're just going to go over the 5 quarterbacks that were drafted in the USFL draft on Tuesday, February 21st. So the first one was Lindsay Scott Jr., excuse me. He's coming out of Incarnate Word. He's a graduate student, and you're going to see a trend here. He's been to 5 colleges. Started off at LSU, redshirted there, left the team, went to Eastern Mississippi College, which has put together a lot of great JUCO players. While there, he ended up going to Mizzou, was the scout team quarterback, got hurt, transferred again, went to Nichols, didn't play in 2019, 2020, didn't really play. They didn't play in 2020 because of COVID, and then spring of 2021, they ended up playing, and then played again his redshirt season, which it was kind of wonky. He ended up starting, 16 games there, did 34 touchdowns, and then transferred once again to Incarnate Word, which I believe Sonny Dykes is there, and put together a record-setting season. Put an upset over the FBS school, Nevada, Missouri, Nevada. Started 14 games, threw 60 touchdowns, over 4,500 yards. That completion percentage at 70 almost 71%, 70.9% is really what stands out to me in this. And only 8 interceptions while adding 11 touchdowns on the ground. His college career is pretty nuts. Started 42 games, almost 12,000 yards, 123 touchdowns, 37 picks, and almost 3,000 yard rushing with 32 rushing touchdowns. Now in college, remember, they do take away your rushing totals if you get sacked. So there's a good chance he was over 1,000 yards a couple times and that his rushing stats are higher. Scott's a bit older. He's 24 years old. He'll be 25. He's well-traveled, but He's going to the Pittsburgh Maulers. He was taken in the second pick of the first round. So Panthers took an offensive lineman. This guy was the second pick. Now, I don't know how he grades out as far as professional being a pro quarterback. He's under 6 foot, so he's probably 5'10". We're not really sure about a lot of these guys on what their draft stock is. Scott will definitely get a workout because of his athletic ability, proficient rushing career, but he might be one of those guys they want to, hey, let's move him to a different position type thing. I'm not really sure. We're going to learn a lot about what these guys tend to do moving forward, but it's definitely good name recognition a little bit. Not many people know who he is, but it's definitely good name recognition from the FCS level, who he's won the Walter Payton Award, All-American, dominated, and was at one point Mr. Football for the state of Louisiana. So second quarterback taken was by the Gamblers in the third overall pick, so it went back-to-back, and it's Chase Bryce. If you don't know who Chase Bryce is, he was at one point the backup to Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence. Started his career at Clemson. He's originally from Georgia. Went to Duke for 2020, and then finished off at App State. He continued to be there as a grad student. He's 25 years old, so another older guy. While at Clemson, played some spot time, won a national championship in 2018. Not much success at Duke, went 2-9, and then put together some 2 nice seasons in 2021 and 2022 at App State, winning Newcomer of the Year, was an all-conference player. And overall, he went 18 and 19 in his college starts. He started 37 games. Finished his career with about 9,500 yards, 73 touchdowns, 36 picks. Now, with that pedigree, with the experience, and that's the big thing, a lot of these guys have been in school for years upon years. So I don't know. I would think that we would see Chase Bryce go to the NFL, go to the USFL over the NFL because he's got something to prove. He's older and whatnot. Under Lindsay Scott, who is a lot more athletic and younger, and then with this trend of having these guys, and even he's on a practice squad, Lindsay Scott, to essentially serve as a decoy, especially like what we saw Eric King make those like cameo appearances on the Panthers for that 1 week, the mimic Lamar Jackson. We'll see what happens with Chase Bryce, but I would opt to see him over a couple of these other quarterbacks to go direct to the USFL, and he was one of those guys that they added to the roster. So the Gamblers, they got Terry Wilson, Kenji Bahar, who started a couple games for them, and then Montel Cozart. I'm not high on Bahar. I would rather see Cozart play, even though he's got limited experience from the CFL, and then was pretty much inactive all last year for the Stallions. He was traded, but I'm very excited to see if Chase Bryce can kind of come in and battle Bahar for the start. I think it's the most advantageous opportunity for him and the biggest chance for him to get a late training camp invite and possibly extend his career in that aspect. Now, another quarterback taken in the second round by the Michigan Panthers was Tanner Morgan. Now, Morgan's another graduate student. He's 23 years old. He's originally from Kentucky. He played his whole career at Minnesota under PJ Fleck, through a great 2019, and then kind of dialed off some injuries in 2020, really regressed as a passer in 2021, COVID season in 2020. So we saw this guy out of nowhere in 2019 after starting a couple games. Granted, Minnesota was doing some pretty awesome stuff, some great culture change over there by PJ Fleck, leading the charge there. He's pretty much been with Fleck his whole career after Fleck was at Western Michigan for a couple of years and really kind of was a part of that change of the program. As long as Fleck's been there, Morgan's been there. 11-2, they ended up, bumping up to that number 10 ranking. And it's kind of a disappointment that Morgan didn't grow, and maybe that could be attributed to the injuries and the shortened COVID season. There's a lot of different factors with these quarterbacks. Now, the Panthers do only have 2 quarterbacks on their roster, Eric Berrier and Josh Love. Paxton Lynch obviously went to the XFL. He's not coming back, and Shea Patterson, who they drafted, was released. So it is quite possible Morgan can come in there and play at some point. I would think that they would want to get a better look at Barrier, but it comes down to with all these quarterbacks, and now I'm coming off as repetitive. What does this guy think is the best move for him? I personally think that maybe coming to the USFL is better. He's 23 years old. He'll be 24 after kickoff. Going into an NFL camp at 24, it's possible. But to me, he kind of reeks of a training, not even a training camp, like a rookie mini camp guy. Decent size at the 6'3", 215. He hasn't played much football since 2019. So I'm really hoping outside the 2021, but didn't really put in that great. Like he started 13 games and went 9-4, but he only threw 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. One of his worst seasons in college. That wasn't related to the COVID season. So I'm not really sure what he does. I would think it'd be better for him to go to the USFL rather than continue in the NFL and kind of deal with that limbo. Next quarterback we're going to talk about was drafted by the Generals with their 15th overall pick in the second round. Adrian Martinez, once again a transfer guy. He's 23 years old. He just turned 23 in January. Was at Nebraska for 3 years. Not related to Taylor Martinez, and then only started 6 games for Kansas State this year. He's another guy I think needs more experience, extremely athletic, might be asked to change positions in the NFL. I think he comes to the Generals and starts, not in, I don't want to say starts week 1, but can easily battle DeAndre Johnson and Kyle Lauletta for playing time. Right now, I feel like the Generals could use Lauletta in the passing game to complement what Luis Perez does, not ask him too much. But because of the rushing ability and athletic ability of Martinez, you might be able to kind of cut down on that. I think it depends on what I hate saying this because I'm coming off as repetitive. I think for Martinez, if he wants to possibly change positions, that might be the best move. Like I said, he went 5-1, finished his college career going 19 wins, 25 losses, throwing almost 10,000 yards over 5 collegiate seasons, 49 touchdowns through the air, 44 touchdowns through the ground. Completion percentage in college is 64%. 2020 through for about 71%, 71.5%. So his completion percentage has been over 60 for the majority of his college career, except for 2019. 2018 really came out, threw for 2,600 yards. The team went 4-7, threw 17 touchdowns, and then added 8 touchdowns on the ground with 629 rushing yards. I mean, like everything, this is kind of a crapshoot for a lot of these guys. I think Martinez kind of bets on himself and plays that athletic guy, try to get on the team. He's 6'3", 220, so decent build. He could probably be a receiver, depending on how his routes are and everything like that, or play some running back, whatever he could do to make a team. I think I would like to see him go to the NFL, change positions over Lindsay Scott, who's a little bit smaller, because I think he might not have as great as an opportunity with the Generals and Scott does with the Maulers. Now, the last quarterback is Malik Cunningham. Played 5 years at the University of Louisville for the Cardinals, threw for 9,600 yards, 70 touchdowns, and added 50 more on the ground. 2021, despite them going 6-7, scored 20 rushing touchdowns. He's played in multiple bowl games, had some success. 23-24 of 23 of 24, replaced Jawan Pass. Was in the same room in 2017 with Lamar Jackson, but didn't really back him up. Jawan Pass was there. Obviously, he went to Prairie AMU or AMM, and now Pass is the third string quarterback on the San Antonio Brahmas. We did not see him play last week. So with Cunningham, another guy extremely athletic, that's going to come down. Do you want to be a quarterback or do you want to transfer? He's 6'1", 195 pounds. I mean, I hate doing this because I seem so repetitive, but it's weigh the options, guys. Weigh the options. Do you want to play the training camp game? 24 years old. Do you feel like your window's closing? And the thing is, too, is now they have the rights to these players. So Cunningham or any of these players can go to the NFL, wash out, hate to say wash out, and then come back to the USFL or maybe the XFL. There's so many options for NFL or for quarterbacks and whatnot. It's not even outlandish the way the FCF has changed everything up that he could go down to Atlanta and play in the FCF in the spring, or excuse me, in the fall, because they changed the season from spring to fall now for football, and go along with that and just get some game tape and just kind of stay in game shape and whatnot. Now the arena game is completely different than the NFL. It's outrageous how different it is. Kurt Warner's talked about it, a lot of these guys have talked about, but what we do have is an opportunity now to see players continuing to play. And if Cunningham wants to make a couple $100, go and play in FCF games on the weekends, I'm not against it to any of these guys. I think Cunningham has a better shot than Adrian Martinez to make the team. Any of these NFL teams as a quarterback, passing wise, he's been over that 60%, in that 62, 63 range. However, it really just comes down to the team you're drafted to, right? So if one of these guys gets drafted to the 2022 Bucks, where they had Blaine Gabbert, Ryan Griffin, Kyle Trask, and Tom Brady, you're probably not making that team, and you're probably just going to be a camp body if that. But they get drafted to a team like the Bengals. Yeah, there's Joe Burrow, but Jake Browning's there, as well as Brandon Allen. Those guys don't jump off the board as top tier backups. It's not like it's an outlandish thing to see an undrafted free agent get bumped into the number 2 spot. It's happened before, or at least in number 3. Browning's been around for years there, and he has taken over Allen's spot. So it's not an outlandish thing to see some of these things happen. So without further ado, those are your 5 quarterbacks taken in the USFL draft. Pretty awesome that we're seeing a lot of movement, whether it be the XFL or USFL. Love me some quarterbacks, love talking quarterbacks. Continue to do some breakdowns on these guys as we get closer in the season, and we'll be doing a top quarterback list for the USFL as I did with the XFL. Check out my XFL rankings as well. I'm putting that out before this video, so you guys should get that. I got 2 videos dropping today, Wednesday, as I record this pretty late. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. If I missed anything, leave me a comment. I appreciate it, guys, and hope you guys all have a great night. And I appreciate everything, the help. I can't talk about that any more than I already do. Night, guys.